Hi folks, HR Funk here. With something new from Vector Optics, what I have is the Vector Optics red dot sight and magnifier combo kit. And in this video, we're going to take a look at this system. I'll give you a close-up look at it here in the shop, and we'll head off to the range and see how it performs. So here we go. We'll start this up-close look at the Vector Optics red dot magnifier and combo kit with the way you receive it, which is in the box. And upon opening the box, we find instructions for mounting these optics. There is a warranty card. We also have the mount right there. We have the red dot sight that I almost dropped. The magnifier, a lens cleaning cloth, some mounting hardware. There's a hex wrench and some screws inside there. We've got a couple of tools for adjusting the optics. And a little bit more mounting hardware. I'll clear out this packing material and we'll start our actual review of this combo kit. At this point, I have assembled the Vector Optics red dot and magnifier combo kit and installed it on a Ruger 1022 rifle that you might recall from several years ago as a winter project. And the assembly of the optics to the mount was not difficult, but it was a little bit tedious, especially with the red dot sight itself, because I had to hold the entire assembly upside down and insert the tiny screws that hold the optic to the mount with everything upside down, and then reach through from the bottom, which was actually reaching through from the top when it was upside down, and screw those screws into place. As I said, it was not really difficult, but it was a little bit fiddly, and it took just a little bit of time to accomplish that. Conversely, attaching the magnifier to the mount was pretty simple because it's much more open on the bottom, and even the screws themselves are larger and easier to handle. So I was able to attach both of these optics properly and then mount them to the rifle. Mounting them to the rifle was a very straightforward process. It was not difficult at all to mount it to the 1913 rail that you see here. So this review is actually going to involve three components of this system. I have the red dot optic, I have the magnifier, and also the combo mount. So I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible, and all of the information for all of these things are available online at the Vector Optics site. So if you don't hear me cover something, go to that website and you're probably going to be able to find whatever it was that I didn't mention. Starting things off at the front, this is the Vector Optics Scrapper 1x29 red dot sight. This optic is constructed from 6061 T6 aluminum. In fact, all of these components, the mount and the magnifier, are constructed from that same material. And here's a view of the 29mm objective lens of the Scrapper. And as I said a moment ago, this is a one-power optic, meaning it provides no magnification of objects being viewed. However, it does have multi-coated lenses, meaning that those images appear to be very bright and very clear when they are viewed through the Scrapper. Also, this optic is nitrogen purged, so it should be fog proof. It is waterproof to IP67 standards, meaning it should be able to be submerged to a depth of 1 meter for at least a half an hour without suffering any damage. And the 6 in the IP67 rating means that it is sealed to be dust proof as well. Also, it is shock proof to a rating of 800 Gs. So all in all, this is a very durable optic, and in the past, when I have torture tested Vector Optics products, I have found them to be very durable, and this should be no exception. I don't think you're going to have any problems. If it gets bumped or dinged or anything else, it should last very well and work very well out in the field. The scrapper is powered by a side-mounted CR2032 battery that goes inside this compartment right here, and that battery has a projected life of up to 50,000 hours. Now obviously that's going to vary depending upon the amount of time the sight is actually used and the brightness level to which it is set, but that battery life is also aided by the fact that this optic has motion sensor technology, meaning that after a period of time when the sight senses no motion, the reticle will sleep, thereby preserving that battery life, but as soon as it senses any movement, the reticle immediately re-illuminates. So the scrapper is basically always ready for use. As soon as you pick it up, that sight is on and the rifle can be fired if necessary. Now, one thing I have not been able to find either in the owner's manual or online or anything else is the exact interval at which the reticle will sleep. And I've not sat here and watched it and tried to time it either, but at some point after sensing no movement, this reticle will go to sleep, and as I said, that will help to preserve that battery life. The two control buttons for the scrapper are located on top, as you see here. To turn the sight on, all that is necessary is to press and release the front button. If there is a desire to physically turn the sight off, rather than to rely on the motion sensor technology, it is necessary to press and hold that front button. These buttons also control the 10 illumination settings of the scrapper, the first 2 of which are night vision compatible, the remaining 8 are for normal daylight conditions, and the buttons, in my estimation, are a little counterintuitive. The front button actually reduces the brightness level 1 level each time it is pressed and released. The rear button causes it to get brighter each time it is pressed and released. To me, it seems like it should be the opposite, but that's just one of the things you need to get used to when you're using this particular optic. Also, this optic has a user-selectable multi-reticle system that allows the shooter to choose between either a 2-minute of angle dot or a 2-minute of angle dot surrounded by, I believe, a 32-minute of angle segmented circle, or the shooter can select the 32-minute of angle segmented circle only. The way the shooter toggles through those options is to press and hold the rear button and just watch through the optic, and you can see when it changes from each of those options. And here's a quick look at the windage and elevation adjustment turrets on the scrapper. These are graduated in 1 minute of angle clicks, and they have a total of 90 minutes of angle correction for both windage and elevation. Now that's 45 minutes of angle up, or 45 minutes of angle down, 45 minutes of angle left, or 45 minutes of angle right from mechanical center. And conveniently, the cap of the scrapper's elevation and windage turret has a little, essentially a screwdriver. Let me get this in focus so you can see it. And you can use that for adjusting the windage and elevation if necessary, if you don't happen to have a screwdriver handy. The scrapper comes with a bikini style lens cover. It has an overall length of 3.12 inches. It weighs 7.1 ounces, and it has a lifetime warranty. Now that's a lifetime warranty for the lifetime of the product. I never know exactly how that's calculated, but in Vector Optics terms, it does have a lifetime warranty. Shifting our attention to the Paragon 3-power magnifier, much of what I said about the scrapper also applies to this optic. It is waterproof, or sealed I should say, to IP67 standards. It is shockproof, it is constructed of 6061 T6 aluminum, and it has that same lifetime warranty. The Paragon magnifier also has fully multi-coated optics, and it has a fast focus eyepiece that allows you to focus the image downrange as well as the reticle when looking through the optic in front. So this is very nice, and I was able to dial that in very quickly when I was out at the range. Now, as I said, the Paragon, or at least this Paragon, is a 3-power magnifier, meaning that anything viewed through the magnifier, to include the reticle in the red dot sight itself, is magnified 3 times over what it would appear to be if you were looking at it with your unaided eye. So everything gets bigger, unlike some rifle scopes where the reticle stays the same size but the image gets bigger. The reticle also gets bigger when viewed through the magnifier. So that's something to be aware of if you've not used this type of a system in the past. The Paragon magnifier also has its own windage and elevation adjustments, and these are mainly used to make sure that the reticle of the red dot sight appears to be in the middle of the magnifier. So this doesn't do anything to change the point of impact on the target. This simply makes everything look proper when you are looking through the magnifier and the red dot sight. The Paragon magnifier is 2.6 inches long and it weighs 7.6 ounces. The final component of this kit is the mount, and the mount is intended to do several things. First off, it properly positions the magnifier behind the red dot sight. It also allows the magnifier to be moved out of position for close-in engagements so that just the red dot sight can be used for very fast work. But if magnification is needed for greater precision at distance, it can instantly be moved into position and used in conjunction with the red dot sight. This mount also allows the magnifier to be moved down out of the way the opposite direction, and I'm not sure why that would be necessary, but if a particular shooter had a preference to move the sight down, maybe this shooter is left-handed and it's easier to move the sight from that direction than it is to move from this direction. Either way, it does allow for that movement of the magnifier, so either direction the shooter might want it to go, it can go that direction. The mount also has a very generous see-through area, so if there is a desire on the part of the shooter to use iron sights, there is plenty of room there to be able to see those iron sights underneath the optics that are installed. A couple of observations concerning this mount. The first one is not a major concern, but it's worth being aware of. I mentioned a moment ago that the bikini-style lens covers come with the scrapper red dot sight. And because of where the mount positions the magnifier, there is not sufficient room to be able to install the lens cover and have it fit properly regardless of exactly where the magnifier is positioned. The other thing to be aware of with the mount is it positions the optics in the proper location for an AR-15 flat top platform. So the center line of the optic is about 2.5 inches above the rail. And as I said, that works great for an AR-15, but with anything that has any drop to the stock, and as you can see with my 10-22 here, there is a slight drop to this stock. It really requires almost a chin weld when shooting with a firearm like this. So be aware of that. It didn't cause me a great deal of trouble. As you'll see, I was able to shoot some very accurate shots with this system with the vector optics, red dot sight, and magnifier installed. But it just didn't feel quite as natural, especially when I was doing close-in defensive type work with this particular system. It would have probably been much, much better had I installed this on an AR style rifle. And that's going to segue pretty well into the live fire portion of this video. When I got to the range with this system, I did several things, beginning with zeroing it at a distance of 50 yards. And once I had a pretty good zero established, I tried a slow fire group of 5 shots from that distance of 50 yards using both the magnifier and the red dot sight on a bullseye style target. I'll show you that now. Here's a quick look at that 50-yard bullseye target, and the entire group measured about 2 inches from that distance of 50 yards. The best 4 shots out of that 5-shot group were in about 1.25 inches, and something to keep in mind with all of these groups is the fact that I'm working with a 2-minute of angle dot, only 3 power magnification, and the ammunition that I'm using is plain old CCI mini mags. So this is a pretty accurate rifle, and I think with the ammunition that I'm using and the 2-minute of angle dot and all of that, This is not a bad group from that distance of 50 yards. If I was using match ammo or something else, I would have a higher expectation for the accuracy, but overall, I thought this was pretty good. After that, I decided to speed things up a little bit. I switched out the target to a human silhouette style, and I fired 5 shots at the body from that distance of 50 yards using only the red dot sight, and I was firing these very, very quickly because I was trying to see just exactly what kind of precision I could get at speed with this optic, and here's what that looked like. Next, I moved the magnifier into place and shot essentially the same drill, only this time I was firing headshots, so I need a little bit more precision. I was still firing them very quickly, and here's what that looked like. Now it was time to stretch the legs of this system a little bit, and I moved the target out to a distance of 100 yards, and from that distance of 100 yards, I was using the magnifier the entire time. First was 5 rapid shots from 100 yards, again at the body of the target. Here's what that looked like. Now with those body shots, I was holding dead center in the body of the target. I did not make any allowance for drop of the bullets, and I knew there would be some bullet drop at that distance. So afterwards, I fired 5 headshots. This time around, I was trying to fire very precise shots using the magnifier and also holding for the bullet drop. And here's what those 5 headshots from 100 yards looked like. And here's a look at that target I was using for the 50 and 100 yard shooting on the silhouette. The blue stickers are from 50 yards, and by the way, those two 50-yard groups were almost identical. They're almost the exact same size and even almost the exact same shape. The red stickers are the shots at 100 yards. As I said, the shots to the body were not with any kind of hold to compensate for the bullet drop. For the shots to the head, I held right at the top of the head, estimating that would be just about right for the bullet drop at that distance. And as you can see, that worked out pretty well. Now, especially from 100 yards, keep in mind that I have a dot that's covering 2 inches on the target, and I'm working with only 3 power magnification. And all in all, from that distance, I thought those groups were pretty respectable. Next, I moved up to 7 yards to do a little bit of close quarter work with this system, and here's how that went. Finally, I backed off to a distance of about 20 yards, and from that distance, I was performing more or less a modified failure drill. I started out with the magnifier off to one side or down below the red dot sight, and I fired the first shot with just the red dot sight to the body of the target. Then as quickly as I could, I moved the magnifier into position and tried to fire a follow-up shot to the head of the target. And I was moving the magnifier first one direction and then the other to see if there was any issue with the movement at all and exactly how I thought that would work if you needed to quickly move the magnifier into place to get a shot off. And you can see for yourself how that went. So, final thoughts on the Vector Optics Red Dot and Magnifier combo kit. Overall, I was pretty favorably impressed by this optic system when I was out at the range. The clarity of both of these optics was very good. The image quality was very bright when I was looking through them. And also the brightness of the red dot sight itself was certainly good enough for the bright daylight conditions that I was shooting in when I was testing this. I really don't think I can fault the optics at all. In fact, as I said, I thought their performance was very good. The one thing that I wish was different about this system is the mount, and specifically, I wish it could be made a little bit lower. It can actually be made higher. There are a couple of spacers that are included for both optics, so I could raise them up a little bit. But the issue, as I said earlier in the video, with a rifle like this that has some drop to the stock, it just ends up being a little bit too high. And I noticed that especially when I was shooting through the defensive drills. And you might have noticed it especially in the drill where I was working the magnifier back and forth. And what I would notice is I would come up, and normally when I bring the sight up to my eye on any kind of rifle, the reticle lines up immediately with my eye and I'm ready to start my trigger press. However, when I was doing that with this system, I had to take just an instant and fine-tune my sight picture before I could start my trigger press, and it just felt a little slow because of that. Now, that's not entirely the fault of this optic system. As I said, it's intended to be installed on an AR-15, or at very least a rifle that has an inline design like the AR-15, and with something like my 1022 that has that stock that drops toward the rear, it just doesn't work quite as well. It's not bad, it's not horrible, but it's just something that I noticed. Other than that, to any degree that you and your firearm are capable of shooting fast and accurately, this optic combo kit is not going to hinder you. In fact, it's probably going to help out quite a bit. As you saw, the accuracy that I was able to obtain out at the range was pretty darn good for this system and for the ammunition that I was using. And as I said, this is a very durable product. I know that from past tests with Vector Optic products. I didn't feel the need to beat the daylights out of these to show what I already know, especially since they do have a lifetime warranty. So if you have a problem, you can get a hold of Vector Optics and they will repair or replace your optics for you. Also, keep in mind that this entire system comes in for less than $450 when you look at the Vector Optics store, so you can go online and find more information about availability and pricing and all that. And if you would rather have these components individually, you can also get just the red dot sight or just the magnifier. I'm not sure if just the mount comes individually or not, but again, check the Vector Optics store and you can find that out for yourself. In any case, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, stop by my website, hrfunk.com, and check out the news and information page there to see all the latest things going on with me and the channel. And go by the products page, because a lot of the products that I've reviewed have links on that page, and there's information beneath some of those links that'll save you some money if you decide to make a purchase. See you next time, folks. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.